Fallen Skywalkers, this is internet personality Vangelus, and it took me nearly a calendar year to get a hold of Transformers Generations Age of the Prime's leader class, the 13 Megatronus Prime. I had one on pre-order at EB Games. I saw one at a different EB Games and said, nah, I have a pre-order. And then the Eaton Center EB Games closed and they lost my pre-order, and I didn't see another one at MSRP until Ages 3 and Up got them in at their warehouse in December. I'm still salty and heated. Run the sponsor spot!
This video has been sponsored in part by TransformersTCG.org. Megatronus the Fallen dwells in Wave 9 beta testing with art by F Draws. Attack in bot mode to either scrap the defender's upgrades or send scrapped upgrades to oblivion. Weather a storm in alt mode with attack damage limitation in the face of consecutive battles. Find out more on TransformersTCG.org. Playing the cards supports the channel. Supporting the channel feeds the machine.
Megatronus Prime in Age of the Primes leans directly the heck and hell and Tartarus and Hades and Satan hole into the Dreamwave era, The Fallen, a coal-toned, grape-highlighted devil bot with glowing vents all over his body. And in the case of this toy, fluorescent paint hits to make all the menacing embers actually pop with intensity, doubly so under UV lighting that I don't have to demonstrate it myself. The visual delivery is fantastic on this piece, with boxy intensity and solidity from every angle that matters, and a 2020s hefty-in-hand feel that helps one forget the horrifying state of leader-class MSRP in this disaster-pocked day and age for our hobby space. Whether he's heralding the eventual rise of Decepticon tyranny or the tariff-driven calamity that's racked industries aplenty in real life, Megatronus Prime can ramp up his silhouette with a decent suite of included accessories. A small cannon and beefy Requiem blaster can 5mm their way onto various ports all over his body, while a foursome of flame effect parts bring the old Dreamwave vibe fully to the fore. So far, my copies of these parts don't feel squishy or sweaty enough to have me too worried about plasticizer transmission degradation, but as always, I recommend a bit of short-term vigilance as well as keeping them in a separate bag in the long term. Megatronus also comes with a spark fuser staff, whose lower segment can separate to provide him with a dedicated energon machete. One can get a bit creative with all four weapon pieces, thanks to their various degrees of pegging and porting, allowing Megatronus to represent a primal level of
Evo Fusion!
We begin with the ball socket neck. On leader class, I'm always happy to see some, a little bit of waggle at least. Some waggle, some wibble, some look up and down. Obviously you can, break his neck if you want to just end the story machinima style. His arms can swing around, they can T-pose outwards. When you do this, you might be popping them slightly out of here. That's because there are butterfly joints, part of the transformation, but they are very articulation assistable, they let him do that, and that's pretty cool. There are also functional bicep swivels, a fairly decent single hinge elbow that comes in kinda tight, the ball socket connection that his hands are attached via allow for a wrist swivel, and you get the modern Transformers value joint, the knuckle. And it's not a bad one. It looks okay when it's open, it preserves the 5mm connectivity, looks okay as a fist, and you can snap a 5mm stick in there with minimal difficulty. By the way, this thing can waggle around a bit. It's actually on a ball socket connection for some side-to-side movement or swinging upwards if you want it to be erect. This one just moves left and right, up and down like that, because this is actually on with a 5mm peg, and it's not on in the package. It did not get stolen. If you bought one just now, don't worry, it's in some paper. You can also move the waist left and right. Despite the presence of hinges visibly, there's no ab crunch. It's just a big, unimpeded, hefty waist swivel. You can also ambulate these things really well. Like, they have the swivel and double hinge, so you can have them point over his shoulders if you want to, get some real, like, fan-moded play action going on with the 5mm ports up there. The little side skirts can wiggle and waggle to get out of the way, because you can't, well, not for this. This is just showing off that he can kick forward and backward quite well. He can kick high upwards past the horizon line, which is always pleasant, but these can get out of the way so he can also execute a near Van Damme split. Obviously, with these ankle tilts, I'll just show you now, he could still balance between two trucks or cars or train bunkers, etc., but he can't do the full rest my nuts on the ground split, and, that's for you to deal with, less so me. That's a personal thing. There's a thigh swivel, though. That's not personal. That's just a fact. There's also this. You could make use of that, I guess. It's a transformation joint, though. I would just stick to swiveling this thing. The knees are a single hinge with their own sub-swivel, just 90 degrees, but this also means you can have him twist his thighs independently of the rest of his body, which is kind of fun. And then you saw it, there is an ankle tilt down here. There's a little bit of forward tilt on the foot, too, which is helpful if you want to get a slight bit of pelvic thrust going. And overall, very decently articulated for a big guy, and none of it feels very impeded. I find myself not really wishing, like, oh, if only this thing wasn't bumping into that thing. Even when he's got stuff on him, it's generally fine. I'm pleased with how much of an action figure this hefty boxman is in robot mode. With just over 40 years of history, Transformers have been making boxy dudes who turn into tanks for a long time, so I was absolutely chuffed and smirking as I worked my way through the transformation of Age of the Prime's Megatronus Prime for the first time, because it manages to make so many small and meaningful creative decisions from beginning to end. Little delicious moments like the unfolding tread sections from within the robot mode's shoulder blades, or the simple fact that the treaded backpack and upswinging chest panel include extra flourishes that culminate in a locked integration that fills out the front of the tank mode, avoiding the predictable H-shaped outcome of so many Transformers tanks that came before. And while the legs do some of the basic motions of a classic H-tank conversion, the extra twists and bonus panels once again add the magic word, flourish, before stacking and tabbing together to provide a stable landing zone for the turret assembly to, itself, stack and tab on top. Unfortunately, the weakest moment is the cherry on top, as the cool double-hinged extension of the Requiem blaster pegs in between the robot mode shoulders, and that's it. The connection is solid, don't get me wrong, but there are even angular tabs near the front that look like they're supposed to do something. I wouldn't call it a ruinous or even flaccid ending, but just imagine if the transformation concluded with a final, satisfying, tactile kashunk. If ever there has been a catalog of satisfying tank shapes, then this is among them. Megatronus Prime's alt mode is a slab of treadborne armor with a brickish turret on top, garnished greedily with spikes and greeble, and apparently based on a Pat Lee tank design from the old Dreamwave profile books. I wonder if he was possessed by a ghost at the time that he drew it. It is a satisfying, hefty thing to lift and grin at before slapping back down onto a desktop, and can roll by the good graces of 4 little wheels protruding from the bottoms of the 4 tread sections. The turret can rotate freely, albeit slightly off-center for those who care, I say as one who kinda does not in this case. And due to its single axis of connection, you can also raise and lower the Requiem blaster's firing angle. And, despite my qualms about that single-axis peg-based connection, it doesn't really feel fragile, at least not at the time of this recording. The 2 bigger flame effect parts have prescribed places to live on the turret, which looks more awkward than their prescribed spots in bot mode, while the smaller flame effect parts make use of their vaguely mysterious 5mm holes to attach to the spark fuser, which itself mounts on the side of the tank using an obvious peg and a much less obvious little tab to slot connection. It's fine. It's a bot mode weapon strapped to the side of a vehicle, as we have seen in Transformers many times before. I am at an impasse as to whether or not I would call Megatronus Prime a tour de force, noting with pleasure that he hits multiple high marks in multiple fields, while lost in consideration as to whether or not some of his standout factors are more of a mark of a solid toy in a very shaky time in our history, hobbies or otherwise. But it was fascinating to go through 2025 having not interacted with the piece at all, as I now see how this toy left a mark across the line for those lucky, smug bastards who got theirs when it first came out. This is a rock-solid entry in the leader class price point, putting a shadow over those who would come afterwards, like Onyx Prime, and raising the stakes exponentially on the other evil-presenting leader class tank robot that came later in the year in Studio Series' 1986 Megatron. With two great modes, a fun and interesting transformation, and a healthy personal play pattern's worth of accessories and 5mm interactions, this remains a very worthy modern Transformers piece, regardless of one's interest in the 13 Primes, or Dreamwave comics, or staring bleakly at the state of manufacturer's suggested retail price, also known as MSRP. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I wanted to send a special sizzle out to all my Patreon, Ko-fi, and YouTube membership supporters for their parts in keeping my own internal furnace burning and persevering, regardless of how much else is on fire around it.